This video is going to talk about comparing and ordering rational numbers. And what we're going to do a lot of is comparing the signs, positive to negative, but we're also going to do a lot of converting between fraction to decimal and decimal to fraction. So it's a good thing that we've gotten a lot of practice with that already. So, the first thing that we're going to do is we see -4 compared to 1.1. And as we know when we're comparing and ordering integers, we're going to look at the sign first and then look at the number. Because when I look at these signs, I see a negative number here and I see a positive number over here. There's no sign, which means that's positive. Which means I don't have to worry about anything. I know that the positive number is bigger. Done. Simple as that. It gets a little bit more complicated when we start to work with all negatives or all positives. And because we've done so much work already working with negatives, you're going to see, working with positives, you're going to see a lot of negatives that are going to be implemented in this video. So when we see -3.15 and -3.25, we need to compare these just like regular numbers. So if I see -3.15, -3.25, I'm going to line up the decimal so that I can compare these. The 3's are in the same place value, so I know that that's not going to help. My 10ths place, however, is different. The 2 is bigger than the 1, but because I'm working with negatives, I know that -3.15 is going to be bigger. Now we're going to scoot over to -2/5 and -4/15. And that is a 4, I promise. I think I checked this out beforehand. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to compare fractions just like we normally do, which is cross multiplying. Which means I'm going to multiply 5 times 4. I'm going to get 20. I'm going to multiply 15 times 2. 15 times 2 is 30. Now, these are both negative numbers, and because they're both negative numbers, I need to take the opposite number. Normally, I would take the 30, but because they're both negative, I would much rather take the 20 because negative means the opposite. So -4/15 is less of a loss than -2/5. The same thing over here. -3.15 is less of a loss than -3.25. Now we get something a little bit more complicated. We see -0.79 and -9/11. Now when you're comparing fractions and decimals together, you need to get them all to be the same type of number. What I'm going to choose to do here is I'm going to choose to make -9/11 into a decimal. So let's go ahead and let's take care of that. If you choose to make 0.79 into a fraction instead, you can do that. But if I get 79 over 100, -79 over 100, that means I'm multiplying 11 times 79, and that sounds like a lot of work. So instead, I'm going to make the Ellen divide, and I'm going to put 9 on the inside, 11 on the outside. 11 doesn't go into 9, but 11 can go into 90, and 11 goes into 90 8 times. Because 8 times 1 is 1, 8 times 1 is 1. Then I have 90 minus 88. Well, 88, 89, 90, that's going to be 2. Pull down another invisible 0. 11 goes into 20 1 time. 1 times 11 is 11. I'm going to get 9 there, but I can finish right here. I don't need to keep going because I see 0.79 and 0.81, and I'm going to try to compare these two numbers. 0.81 is bigger than 0.79. If I was owing someone money, I would much rather pay them 79 cents than 81 cents because we know that those 2 pennies are going to make a huge difference. But you got to bear with me. So, -0.79 is greater than -9/11. Now, we've done a lot of comparing. We're going to look at one example of ordering rational numbers because it's pretty much the same thing. You just have to make sure that all of the numbers are in the same type. So I have two fractions and a decimal, but it's a lot easier to compare decimals than to compare fractions. So I'm going to convert negative 3 1/5 and negative 3 12 over 25 into decimals. So I'm going to ignore the 3 for a minute, and I'm just going to take 1/5, make the L and divide, 1 on the inside, 5 on the outside. 5 can't go into 1, but it can go into 0. 5 goes into 10, 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10, and I'm done. So my answer isn't negative 2, negative 0.2. It's negative 3.2, because I have to remember that whole number, and I have to remember that negative sign. So this is negative 3.2. This is negative 3.3. I can already see that negative 3.3 is probably going to be my smallest number, but we're going to get to that in a minute. I have negative 3 12 over 25. So in order to change 12 over 25 into a fraction, I have to make that L and divide. And to do that, I'm going to go to the place where I have space, which is somewhere. Let's go right here. 12 on the inside, 25 on the outside. This looks bad until you start to think about quarters, and you remember that you know how to deal with quarters, so you know how to deal with this. 25 can't fit into 12, so we put X's above those, but 25 can fit into 120. How many quarters are in 120 cents? Well, that's going to be 4. 4 times 25, 4 quarters is 100 cents, or 100. 120 minus 100 is going to be 20. Get another invisible 0, drop that down. 25 goes into 200. 25 goes into 200 8 times, because there are 4 quarters in $1, so there's 8 quarters in $2. So negative 3 12 over 25 is going to be negative 3.48. So now, all I have to do is I have to compare these three numbers. I have negative 3.3, negative 3.2, negative 3.48. That is absolutely not helpful. Much better. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in these invisible zeros here. And I have to remember that I'm working with negatives. And when I'm working with negatives, the smallest number is actually going to be the largest. So I'm going to find the smallest number in all of these, and I'm going to realize that that's going to be negative 3.20, because these are all the same. So I look at the next number, and negative 3.20 is the smallest, so that's actually going to go in the largest spot. So my largest number is going to be negative 3 1/5. Now I'm done with that. Get rid of it. Now I have to find my next largest number. My next largest number is negative 3.30. I don't have to do anything with this because it was already a decimal before. So I'm going to put negative 3.3. Then my last number is negative 3.48, which as the fraction was negative 3 12 over 25. You may notice that I switched from writing it as a decimal up here to compare to writing the fractions back over here. And I did that because the fraction was the original number that I got in my problem. And when you're ordering numbers, you always have to put it back to the number that you were given in the problem. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 3/8 compared to negative 4, and you're going to compare those two. Negative 4/5 compared to negative 4.49. You're going to compare those two. And then you're going to compare negative 4 over 5 to negative 0.7.